And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program, I speak to the French translator of the Chinese classic Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Valerie Niquet. But can Niquet really explain how the 2,500-year-old book, The Art of War, can still be used to interpret current events? Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The program is coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. In this modern world, there are far fewer wars than any other time in history. We hope it will keep it that way. That doesn't mean, though, military science is less important than before. Military theorists around the world like to draw inspiration from classics by ancient philosophers, and Sun Tzu's The Art of War from China is essential to their reading list. Earlier in Beijing, I spoke to Valerie Niquet, a French translator of the Chinese military classics. Before the interview, take a look at this.
The Chinese dynasties from 771 to 476 BC has a poetic name, spring and autumn. But the reality was far from the tranquility its name suggested. Wars between different regions never ceased. In this chaotic society came a legendary figure, China's most outstanding military strategist, Sun Tzu. His book, The Art of War, is a widely influential work that has affected both Western and Eastern philosophy. The text is composed of 13 chapters, each of which is devoted to one aspect of warfare. Commonly thought of as a definitive work on military strategy, the book even has an impact on business tactics, legal strategy, and beyond. It was first translated into French in 1772 by the Jesuit Jean-Joseph Marie Amiot, and the first annotated English translation was completed and published by Lionel Giles in 1910. For the past centuries, the book has been an important reference material for global strategic research. Valerie Niquet, head of the Asia Department at French Foundation of Strategic Research, retranslated The Art of War, together with the Military Treaty by Sun Bin, another work of the Chinese military classics. For her, these books offer the wisdom that could well guide modern defense policies in Asia and beyond.
The whole translation of The Art of War from Sun Tzu from ancient China. What do you, as a military strategist and as the translator of this beautiful work, impress the most about any of those strategies?
First, as a translator, the language. I love Wenyan, and Sun Tzu's, everybody says Sun Tzu is very difficult, but when you get used to it, the Wenyan is so clear and pure as a written language that I was really impressed. Two parts are very interesting. One is the last chapter, because it's very exciting, is about spies, how different kind of spies you can use. But I think what impressed me more is the fact that he, very early, he says that you do not have to pay attention only to military capabilities, but also to the economics, politics, alliances. So it's a very broad, wide vision of strategy on war.
That's exactly what I want to ask you, Dr. Niquet. What exactly is The Art of War about? Is it about war, or is it about peace?
Well, it is about war. You cannot deny that it is about war. There are a lot of chapters in Sun Tzu about how to win wars in a very practical manner, and he describes all the different terrains of the war. But this is also about peace, and one of the most important things in Sun Tzu is that you must win wars without making war, you know. And it has been very important for China in Chinese history, how to try to convince a potential adversary that his interest is in accepting some conditions, maybe, so it makes you win war without really making war. But Sun Tzu is also written in very broad general terms, so you can also use what he says for your personal life. He says that you have to make plans, to evaluate many factors before making a decision.
Among it, the strategies, one of the most well-known is know thyself, know thy enemy. You will always win no matter what. That's one of the most popular saying. How much does it say about planning strategy?
It is one of the major conditions to win war, or not only war, but to be successful in any activities, is to know the conditions of the enemy and conditions of the situation. So this is one of the major lessons from Sun Tzu, that you have to know yourself, of course, your limitation, it's very important, and to know the enemy, and that enemy is to be taken in a very broad sense. I mean, it's not only the enemy in today's terms, it's just in relations with others, whatever the other is.
And you've been doing research about East Asia security for a long time. If I ask you, which part of the strategy should decision makers in East Asia look at when it comes to Sun Tzu, the art of war, for today's world, today's region, what would you say?
I think the most important lesson from Sun Tzu is to remember that for Sun Tzu, as for everybody else, war is extremely costly. It has a cost, a huge human cost, economic cost. And so one has to be extremely prudent and careful before engaging in policies that could lead to a possible war. Sun Tzu wrote that book in order to help the sovereign, as I said, to win war. But his main lesson, once again, was that war was extremely costly and was to be avoided as much as possible.
One of the things people are extremely interested in these days is what would happen when there is power shift in the world. And we know there is. The speed and the prospect is not known. So in that regard, Dr. Niquet, what would you say among the art of war? Which part of the wisdom can we draw from in order to shine some light on the prospect?
Well, power shift is a reality. It doesn't have to, the result mustn't be war between powers. And I think the most important thing is to be able to manage relations between emerging power or more or less declining power. Once again, avoid misperception about a declining power that maybe is not so declining, so one has to be very careful and well informed. And one of the most important lessons maybe from Sun Tzu is to know that he put a lot of stress on the autonomy of the military. He thought that military people used to know the reality very well, what they can do, what they cannot do, and that the prince must not put pressure on the military to act against the interest of the nation.
But that's not the case anymore. It seems that the military has become part of the government, and the military will make its decision based on the decision coming from the central government, no matter which country we're talking about.
Yes, this is why the governments must be extremely careful in making their decision between deciding for actions that could lead to conflicts or war, because once again for Sun Tzu, and I think this is the most important lesson, is war is extremely, whatever the result, war is extremely costly.
And these days, it is mainly a debate between the civilian and the military side of the government about whether to proceed with the war or a small-scale conflict. Usually, the latter, which is the military, would debate for pro, while the civilian side would rather be more careful. So when you look at the ancient wisdoms coming from Sun Tzu, more than, take a look at it, more than 2,500 years ago, does it really help?
I think if you take it once again in general terms, it helps. It always helps to make plans, to think well before acting, to respect some division. You said that the military is part of the civilian power, and the civilian do, but the military are very well informed about the real situation sometimes, and sometimes the civilian people do not really know what is the real situation. So this is why they need to debate and be extremely careful in evaluating what can be done and what cannot be done.
What do you make of the United States' status and position in today's world as a military strategist?
A lot of countries are eager to have the United States on their side. So we don't know what the United States might or mightn't do, but I think it will be a huge miscalculation to extrapolate from what is going on in Europe by considering that United States will not be ready to act in East Asia. And I mean, these miscalculations happened before, and a war with the United States in East Asia would be, for everybody, extremely, once again, costly, many fields. And I think this is something that has to be avoided at all costs.
In Sun Tzu, The Art of War, there has been a specific quote: pretend inferiority and encourage his arrogance. That, of course, is a military strategy during warfare, meaning that just pretend to be low profile, inferior, so that the other side would feel much superior and even become arrogant. This is an interesting debate that we also have in China about its foreign policy. Should China remain low profile?
Well, I would say that when China was choosing to keep low profile, it has been extremely successful, and including extremely successful in gaining support from all countries in the region. I remember the time when all countries in Southeast Asia were very eager to develop relations with China, perceived always as an opportunity, and were not very eager to have the United States playing a role in East Asia. I don't want to interpret too much, but I must recognize that since a few years ago, the mood has changed. Countries in Southeast Asia, including countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, who are very close to China, are much more prudent and still want to have good relations with China, but are more eager than before to build relations with the United States. So I would say, this is my personal point of view, that the strategy of keeping a low profile might be more successful. And this is what Deng Xiaoping said. I mean, you buy your time not only for biding your time, but just to have the time to build your own power. And so I think this is a very important lesson to remember.
But then on the other hand, what to make of the future? When we have a changing future, we need to lay out the plans and the thoughts to the others. How much is it about the level of strategic thinking, communication? How much is it about the level of real actions? That is also an interesting debate as we are facing a changing world.
Yes, I think that to go back to Sun Tzu, Sun Tzu said that you have to...
we're going back to Sun Tzu.
Yes, we are back to Sun Tzu. And I think he said that you have to make plans by looking carefully at all the factors and evaluating all the factors. I think this is what politicians, and not only military strategists, and economists too, have to do. I mean, just look at all the different factors, not rush to make decisions, be extremely prudent and careful, and I think this is the best way to plan for the future.
Since we're talking about Europe, which part of the art of war do you think, and the philosophy related to it, can really help Europe today? I mean, you have a lot of crises going on.
It's very difficult for me to find a solution in Sun Tzu for Europe because we are in such a mess these days.
And also you're in the mountain. It's hard to look at the mountain when you're in the mountain.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know if I can find in Sun Tzu any lessons for Europe. What I know is that things have to change and to evolve because the situation in Europe is not very good these days on many fields, be it economics or relations inside the European Union. Yes.
For Sun Tzu, there's a specific quote: never to have military alliance, or at least very careful about it. That, of course, lead us to NATO. What would you make of its future? The Cold War has already ended.
The Cold War has ended by countries belonging to NATO do not see it as an obsolete organization. And as you know, France is back into NATO. Yes. Even France is back into NATO, and the former Eastern European countries are very eager to maintain NATO. As long as Europe will not have its own defense capabilities, as the European Union, I think that NATO will be believed or felt to be very necessary to a lot of European countries.
Is it going to be one weapon against Russia?
I don't think that to ostracize Russia is a good solution.
Dr. Niquet, it's such a pleasure to have you. All the best. I'm looking forward to reading more Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. That's Dr. Valerie Niquet, who is a translator in French, China's classic, The Art of War. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world.